I'm 42 years old and work for a company. I divorced my husband 2 years ago, and now I live with my daughter near my parents' house. My daughter is currently a 16-year-old sophomore in high school. My husband was also my childhood friend, and his family's home is just around the corner. Despite our divorce, we still live in the same city because he has taken over the family business. At first, I didn't want to see his face, so I considered moving away from the city. However, because of my daughter's school district, I decided to buy a flat within the city. The reason for the divorce was my husband's immorality. Since the beginning of our marriage, we were both employed. We cooperated and shared household chores. Daughter has been in daycare since she was 3 months old. Husband took over his family's ironworks business, but the company was struggling and he wasn't receiving a decent salary. We tried to negotiate with my in-laws several times, but their stand was always, we can't give more because the company's performance is so bad. Even so, we as a family had to make ends meet, so we considered the possibility of husband changing jobs. However, husband was like, I can't refuse if my parents ask for help, and he never actually took action. Half a year before the divorce, when my daughter started middle school, I was entrusted with a new project at work. I had opportunities to join projects before, but I repeatedly declined because our child was still young. That being said, daughter was now in middle school. With the consent of my daughter and husband, I was able to take on the project. Doing so inevitably made it impossible to handle household chores as before. My work hours extended and even started to spill over into the next day. Amidst that, my daughter helped with household chores in my place and even cooked meals. My husband cooperated at first, but as soon as he saw an opportunity with my absence, he gradually stopped doing his household chores, let alone taking out the trash. Unaware of this, I was working my fingers to the bone every day. Then, 1 month before the divorce, daughter said she wanted to talk to me and asked me to make some time for her. Immediately that night, I made it home at my usual time. And yet, it's the time my husband usually comes home, but he's not here. When I ask my daughter, is dad late today? She replies, it's always like this. He always comes home just before you do. I was stunned. I've been told by my husband that he's having dinner with our daughter every day. Since I always got home after 10 p.m., I've been relying on my husband for our daughter. Then my daughter begins to spill the beans. She tells me that my husband comes home drunk after 9 p.m. every night, that she's been the one preparing dinner, and that he's always carrying his smartphone, constantly making calls and sending emails. I was shocked as this was all news to me. What I couldn't forgive was causing such anxiety to our daughter during her sensitive years in middle school. I apologized to my daughter for not noticing this sooner, and I told her to leave it all to me from now on. Now, how do I bring this up with my husband? Plus, I need to gather evidence. Just like solving work troubles, one issue after another comes to mind. My daughter is eager to gather evidence, telling me, Mom, get a divorce quickly. It would be better without such a dad. My husband, who made our daughter feel this way, is now my enemy. I promptly install a tablet with GPS enabled in my husband's car. I will continue as usual until the evidence for divorce is perfectly in place. A few days later, my husband went out saying he had to work on his day off. The GPS is working wonderfully. My husband's car heads in the opposite direction from his office and stops in front of a stylish cafe. I immediately headed to the cafe and successfully acquired the evidence photos. I also managed to capture perfect evidence photos along the expected route. That night, my husband came home in his work clothes and I confronted him with the photos. My husband turned pale and was speechless. At that moment, I was surprisingly calm and I talked about what will happen from now on. How he's been dumping all the housework on our daughter. How he's been constantly on his phone, making calls and sending emails in front of our sensitive daughter. And what I saw during the day. My husband apologized tearfully, but I didn't have the heart to forgive him. We then put our signatures on the pre-prepared divorce papers, agreeing to discuss the matter with our respective families the next day. When I broached the subject of divorce with our daughter, she agreed, provided I promised to secure custody. From there, things moved rapidly. My in-laws initially implored us to reconsider the divorce, but fell silent once they realized their son was to blame. Once the decision was made, things moved quickly. My parents said come home, but my daughter expressed her desire to live just with me and even offered to help around the house, so we began looking for a new place together. We were excited about finding somewhere stylish and close to her middle school. We then found an incredibly stylish renovated flat. Both of us agreed it was the one. I decided to buy that secondhand flat. Fortunately, I have a steady job, so we could afford it with payments similar to a monthly rent. My husband moves back to his parents' house. Life with my daughter after that was truly enjoyable. I was delighted to see how much she had grown, becoming not just my child, but also a friend with whom I could share anything. Several months later, during one of our busy but happy days, I received a call from my parents' house. "Listen, your ex-husband and his mother just showed up. They say they have something to discuss with you but can't get in touch. What should we do? Should we send them away?" I was surprised, but decided to head over. I had blocked all forms of communication from my ex-husband, so the inability to reach me was my responsibility. It's a 5-minute drive to my parents' place, so I hurried right after receiving the call. When I arrived, my mother approached me with a wry smile. "I didn't expect him to come here with his mother. They seemed distressed about something. Your father and I have no clue what's going on. We were surprised." I apologized and said, "I'll get them out of here as soon as possible," and walked into the house. In the living room, they were both seated politely. My father confirmed my presence and addressed them. "What brings you here? I can't imagine there's anything to discuss at this point." My ex-husband then spoke up. "I had lent $20,000 to your daughter. I'd like it to be paid back." I was confused and said, "What $20,000? I don't recall borrowing any such amount." My ex-husband looked upset and retorted, "What are you talking about? I lent you $20,000 for our wedding. Are you trying to defraud me?" When my ex-husband spoke out, my mother-in-law jumped right in. "A wedding is done for the bride, so that's a debt. It's beyond doubt." I was so astounded I couldn't even find words to respond. Ex-husband then added with increasing confidence, "If you can't make an immediate repayment of $20,000, remarry me. I'll write off the debt that way." Saying so, he pulled out a marriage certificate. That's when my usually mild-mannered father, red in the face, burst out. "Are you all nuts or what? Since when is the cost of a wedding a debt? I never heard such a ludicrous idea. Is it because you're broke and so desperate that your feeble brains are spinning? If you want to fight, we're more than ready. Bring it to court." With that, he tore the marriage certificate to shreds. I was shocked, but thanks to my father, I regained my composure. "The cost of the wedding is a debt, you say? Then I suppose I should claim 15 years of living expenses for the man who could barely earn a decent living, much less than a high schooler with a part-time job. That $20,000 won't even begin to cover it. Are you prepared for that? And remarry? Sorry, but I don't want to see your face again. Please remarry your affair partner." Upon hearing that, my ex-husband, tears welling in his eyes, said, "I lost contact with that woman shortly after. It was just a fling, so it's no big deal." My mother-in-law then chimed in. "I don't think it's my son's fault about the affair. There's some responsibility on the part of those who only worked and didn't care about their home." I could barely contain my laughter. "Come on now, it's clearly your son who's in the wrong here. He did have an affair after all. Neglecting his home and having an affair is on him. Are you sure you're okay in the head?" Ex-husband, looking quite uncomfortable, then said, "I want to start over, but I really need some money." Money, of course. I knew I was more financially stable than my ex-husband, and I knew about his spending habits. I sighed deeply. "I'm sorry, but I can't fulfill your request. This is not a bank or a payday loan service. If you're broke, you'll have to live frugally. Please leave." Then my mother-in-law said, "Then how about $10,000? Or even $5,000 would do. Just lend us some money. Our business has been going downhill and we're really struggling." As I was about to refuse, my father chimed in. "Hey honey, could you pack up some leftovers for 3 people? He asked my mother. With a warm smile, she gladly got to work. My father continued, "The best we can do for you is this. We've always taught our daughter to help those in need, but that doesn't mean we expect her to become a puppet to their whims. It means offering genuine help. We believe Jane has grown into a strong, responsible adult. Please take home a meal made with pride by my lovely wife today. And from this day forward, please stay out of our family's life." With that, he opened the front door, ushering them out. My ex-husband and mother-in-law took the packaged dinner my mother prepared and quickly left. Once they were gone, my parents and I exchanged glances. I couldn't help but laugh and say, "What was that? It was so absurd I can't believe it. It felt like we stepped into a TV drama or something." My father responded, "Well, it was definitely more entertaining than a lousy drama. But I'm really proud of you, Jane. You've grown so strong." My mother also chimed in, "You really have grown strong. I'm surprised and proud. And what a sight that was. I put all the dinner in their take-home boxes. What are we gonna do now?" she said with a laugh. I suggested, "Let's go out for dinner, all of us together. I'll pick up my daughter and I'll treat you guys as an apology for causing trouble. I don't want to owe anything to anyone." My parents were delighted with the idea. Of course, our dinner conversation was dominated by the day's events. Word got around later that my ex-husband's metal workshop had gone bankrupt. Having only ever worked there, he started another job but couldn't last long due to frequent absences. The place where my ex-husband's family home used to be had also turned into an empty lot. As for me, my life continues to be busy as usual. My daughter is growing up to be a well-behaved girl and hasn't hit her rebellious phase yet. I use my ex as a negative example and hope she will marry a wonderful partner when the